Ivan, this could be the most controversial technique in detailing.
It could be. I'm Ivan.
I'm Nick.
This is DIY Detail Podcast. Did a little short video a couple months ago about the 555 method. And reading the comments, we see that a lot of people don't quite understand what it is and why it's there. So we thought we'd dive in a little deeper as to what is the 555 method.
And before we do so, let's just take a look at this video, which has north of 4 million views on the internet.
I'm with DIY Detail. You've got a deep scratch. You want to get rid of that deep scratch. We can do it in 5 seconds. We add gold standard polish to our purple wool pad. We have the machine at speed 5.
Okay, Ivan, so let's just walk through it here. This is a video on YouTube and TikTok, millions of views, right? And tons of controversy. So what do we see on the panel here? Let's just look at this. What are we looking at there on the panel?
So on the panel itself is a tree branch scratch. And it's really weird if you want to take the time and read through the probably thousands of comments by now, you'll see that a lot of people, or there isn't a common consensus as to what is a deep scratch. So to me, a deep scratch is in the clear coat. It's not down to the metal. So some people were saying it's not a scratch unless it's down to the metal. Well, yeah, it is a scratch if it's down to the metal. It's not one we can repair as detailers. If it's down to the base coat, same deal. We can't repair that as detailers. But a deep scratch in the clear coat is one that we can catch with our fingernail, and it's really visible. And that's what we have here. This truck is the owner of the truck. It's his hunting truck. He goes into the woods with it. And there was long scratches like that all around the truck. And this was the method that I've used for probably 10 years now to get rid of really deep scratches quickly and safely.
Okay, let's keep playing.
We add gold standard polish to our purple wool pad. We have the machine at speed 5 seconds with roughly 5 pounds of pressure.
All right, now, so before you do this, people may wonder, what is 5 pounds of pressure? What does that feel like?
What it feels like is nothing really. What you want to look at is the backing plate rotation on your machine. So you want to apply enough pressure that you're just on the verge of stalling that DA. So first of all, this method works best and works most efficiently with a 21 millimeter stroke dual action machine, a free spinning DA. With a short stroke machine like an 8 millimeter, not the best in terms of results, and a 15 millimeter is still a little short. You're going to be able to do it with a 15 millimeter, but it's not going to be as effective. The other key component that we have here is our purple wool pad. It is a very short nap wool. It's designed specifically for this purpose. So this is a pad I designed many years ago. And my reasoning for this pad was, before that, all we had to get really big defects out of a car was a rotary and a heavy wool pad. And yes, that worked, but it wasn't the most efficient way of doing it. And by that point, 10 years ago, the DAs had sort of taken over and people were afraid of using a rotary on a car. By that point, the marketing behind the DAs is really strong, really good.
So 10 years ago, we're 10 years into DAs being very ubiquitous in the industry?
Yeah, at least, yeah. So the first port of cable came out in 1989. But, the long stroke DAs really exploded in the market in 2012, 2013. So with that, with the advent of the long stroke DA, the pads we were using before on the short stroke DAs and rotaries, they work, but they're not as effective. So this pad I specifically designed to answer the question, can we correct with the DA? And we can. And this pad has been used by a couple different companies over the years. But one change that I made coming into DIY Detail is the foam behind it. So the other company that I used to work for, they have a similar pad, but the foam is a lot softer. And it was the foam, honestly, for that pad was chosen for the color. It had nothing to do with the performance. So when I did the R&D on this pad, the yellow foam was actually the best foam. And for DIY detail, since we're in control and I'm not working for a boss, I went back, revisited, and still the yellow foam is the best performing foam. And for DIY detail, if it would have been a yellow foam, an orange foam, a green foam, a white foam, it wouldn't have mattered. I wanted to choose the best performing foam. It just lucked out on this case that it was the yellow foam. But nonetheless, so we had the best performing pad for a long stroke.
Yellow being gold standard. Yellow is our...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
okay. It was a nice little coincidence.
Yeah.
But like I said, it could have been green, it could have been camo colored, it could have been whatever color. Doesn't matter. That's the foam we would have used, was the most high performing foam, and that's what we have here. So we have a pad that is designed specifically for the long stroke DA. We have a pad that cuts very well with the long stroke DA. And we have a pad that stands up to the rigors of the long stroke DA as well.
The reality is the 555 method, which if you haven't seen it yet and you're like, why aren't you showing it to us? I can see your frustration, and we're going to get there in a second. But it is meant to be used with the pad and the polish and the machine that Yvan is telling you.
It's a system. It's not
a system.
Yeah, and we have some people, they've contacted me, contacted you, or written in the comments saying, I tried it, but it doesn't work. And then when you ask them, well, what did you use? Some will say, well, I used a gear-driven polisher. Well, a gear-driven polisher only has an 8mm stroke. So again, not the best. Or, well, I didn't have your wool pad, so I used someone else's wool pad. Or I didn't have your wool pad, so I used a microfiber pad. It can work with those items, but it's not going to be as efficient. It's not going to be as effective. So if you want the best way of doing this, it's 21mm stroke machine. It is our wool pad. It's the gold standard polish. And it's basically, you ask the
a lightly
pressure,
damp pad though, right? Cleaned in the pressure,
yeah.
Cleaned in the pad washer.
Right, pad washer, or you can just spin it out in a bucket. But
got it. So we're not like trying to. I don't want people to feel like we're trying to sell them the whole. You don't need the pad washer, right? It's just, but the damp pad is part of the system that you talk about all the time.
Exactly. And the reason for the damp pad is temperature control. And the reason we say 5 seconds, and we'll stop it right here. Approximately 5 seconds.
Should we show them like the rest of the video at this point?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. It's like less than a minute, so.
Yeah.
You want to release the pressure before you create heat, but when you've eliminated the scratch.
Okay, Yvan, we'll get back to the video in a second. I'm happy to refer to that video at any point during the podcast. You mentioned 5 seconds, right? 5 seconds on the scratch, 5 pounds of pressure, speed 5 on the 21mm dual action polisher. But I noticed that you moved the polisher a little bit. And when I do the 555, I am lasered in. Like, I get my full 5 seconds on that scratch. I'm going to give it every bit of those 5 seconds. I'm not going to move it, right? And the heat, it just heats up a little bit, but it doesn't get hot. Talk about 5 seconds.
So 5 seconds, if you're standing still in one spot, 5 seconds max. As you can see, I was moving the pad because it was a rather long scratch. So you can go up to 10 seconds. The whole goal is to not create more than 30 degrees temperature difference. And that 30 degrees temperature difference is essential for a couple things. First of all, paint manufacturers in general do not recommend any paint spike above 30 degrees. Now you're saying, wait a minute. When I park my car in the sun, it gets way, way hotter than that. Yes, but when you're parking your car in the sun, first of all, the whole panel is expanding and contracting with the heat. First of all. Secondly, you don't have a machine trying to rip the paint off the car. It's just the sun heating it up. But when you're machine polishing, paint manufacturers universally say roughly, they suggest not to go over 30 degrees. So Fahrenheit, by the way, not Celsius. So with that, we don't want to be ripping off the paint. We don't want to be polishing too much. And we don't want to be removing paint. What the 555 method actually does is round over the corners of the scratch. So if we look at a scratch, you'll have your paint surface and then you have a scratch with, sharp corners here. what we're doing is we're rounding off these corners. And by rounding off the corners, our eye doesn't perceive it as a scratch anymore. It looks like a little wave in the panel, but our eyes don't see it as a scratch. The light refracts differently, and we don't see it as a scratch. And in detailing, our goal isn't necessarily to eliminate scratches, it's to eliminate the appearance of a scratch. And once you've eliminated the appearance, then you've reached the goal without damaging the paint any further.
See, because I always thought about it as what you're doing is you're leveling the clear coat. So a scratch that perhaps looked like this V, which is, on my DIY detail notebook, perhaps we could level it and then it would look like this and the light would refract differently, right? But the reality is we could not even level this much clear coat and we could just round these areas. Oh my goodness, you have to be watching the YouTube to understand how bad this drawing is. But if I rounded those two areas, it's going to refract differently and I wouldn't need to even level it down to the V being so small.
Yeah, exactly. And that way...
Let's get me a better presentation method than that.
But well, if we prepared these in advance, you might be able to do something better. But nonetheless, these are all recorded on the fly. There's no script or anything like that.
But not to brag about that, we could get a script for you guys if you wanted. But sometimes just getting Yvan talking is great. So I think graphs showing clear coat and scratches are something that would be really interesting to do at some point. So we'll put that on the list.
Yeah, we'll have to get me a lab coat and a whiteboard on a wall and do it that way.
For the next Detailing 101 video, why not?
We could, yeah. But nonetheless, so in detailing, if we remove the scratch completely, that means we've removed that depth of clear coat, whatever that depth is. And if you feel the scratch with your fingernail, that means it's really, really deep. And how deep is it? Is it too deep to correct? And more often than not, it is. So what we're doing is rounding over the edges, getting rid of the appearance of the scratch. And again, going back to the comments, we have some people that said, oh, that was just a white marker.
Let's look at it. Let's look at it. So when you wipe it off, I don't know if you can see my mouse here or if that's just what I see, but here in the white to the right part of the panel, you still see the scratch, but your whole torso, the scratch appearance is gone. Right. So the thing about 555 is we're not completely leveling all of that clear coat down to the point where there's no V left.
Exactly. We're rounding over that V, so again, we don't see it. But again, going back to the comments, we had people saying that was just a marker, a white marker on the paint. Then you have other people saying, well, I still see the scratch. So is it a scratch or was it a marker or a trick? And it's not a trick. Now, our editor here used the word trick, which may not have been the best choice. A 5-second scratch removal method may have been a little less controversial. Some people see the word trick or hack and then automatically they're defensive. So don't be defensive. You don't need to be. Try it and it works. And again, reading the comments, you'll have a lot of people that go, oh, I tried it and wow, it's spectacular. It works. It's great. Back
it may not always give you what you're looking for.
No, but it's a heck of a lot easier than wet sanding and compounding and doing all of that. In my shops, we used to use it for spot polishing only. So instead of compounding the whole vehicle, we'd identify the 5, 10, or 15 scratches that the customer really wanted to get rid of that were bothering them. And then we just do the 555 on those scratches and then do a paint enhancement over the rest of the vehicle to blend it in. And that worked great for us. And our customers loved it. And it was super efficient. On your Hawk Pro channel, we did the same method when I did a training at your shop. And again, I think that's one of your pretty good performing videos in your channel as well.
Yeah.
But people that were there were skeptical. And then they looked at it and went, oh, wait a minute, it actually worked. So
it's not like it's going to do that on every single, like there may be a scratch where you try this method and it doesn't work. But there's going to be lots where you try and it does work. Now,
exactly.
I think since the name of our company is DIY Detail, if we can teach somebody who doesn't really know their way around a polisher how to make their paint shiny, that's a win. And we have a system that does that.
Yeah, exactly.
And if once you've done that, you can say, hey, you're not getting with the yellow waffle, the gold standard waffle and gold standard polish. you're not getting the defect removal you want on this particular area. Try this. And they see an improvement. To me, these are like gradual steps. I mean, because you can go all the way down to Riddler, Jason Kilmer level where you're spending days on a panel or whatever. Like, there is an art to this entire game as well. But there's an accessibility and an amount of results you can get at a very, very low learning curve level with the right chemicals and processes that I just think that's where the sweet spot of your methods are, is that they absolutely work. Pros use them to be profitable and make customers happy. Like the end user can use this and get results. Will it work every time? Nothing works the exact way you want it to every time.
Exactly.
A heart surgeon could probably do the same procedure on 2 different, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm just trying to meet the people out there who are going to try this and not get the results they see on camera and then leave us a comment and be like, no, we hear you. Yeah. This works a lot of the time. Like, there's genius in it. And yes, Yvan knows how to wet sand. Yes, Yvan could 4-step a car, right, Yvan? Like, I've seen you do the complicated stuff too. It just takes so long that you're like, why would I literally damage the paint to get a result the customer won't see when I can do it in less time and less effort?
Right, because let's face it, every time we're compounding or polishing a vehicle, we're removing clear coat. And when you're removing clear coat, technically we're damaging the vehicle. Now, we might make it look better, but we've damaged the vehicle. And when you're doing aggressive wet sanding and aggressive compounding, especially on a daily driver, then that's, to me, nonsensical. If your customer, like this guy, this truck in question, it's his hunting truck. We just use that truck because we wanted a good example of what we could polish quickly, easily, and get a good result with. But he's going to take it back in the woods right after this. And he took it back in the woods 2 days after we were done. So not that we did it for nothing, but pretty close to that. And if you're a professional detailer and you're pushing onto your customers paint perfection every time, that's not good for you. It's not good for them. And it's definitely not good for the car, because once let's say that scratch there, had we wet sanded the scratch to eliminate it, then compounded and then polished, the next time you got a scratch on 1 or 2 inches either side of that original scratch, there's not enough clear coat left for it to scratch. It would have been down to the base coat, or maybe down to the primer, maybe even down to the metal. So,
and again, we look back at this and we see a white line. It wasn't a marker. It was a tree branch scratch. Okay, we've established that. The fact that at the end there's only a little bit close to sort of that edge of the door where you didn't hit it with the polisher, it's just like proof. You can get these quick results a lot of the time with this method. Now, here's my question, because you moved your polisher so quickly there that you didn't really sit on the scratch. It almost looked like you were just compounding the paint. So how would you describe this differently than someone who just wants to compound their paint with the wool pad and the gold standard? Like, it may look very similar to just, hey, I'm just going to use this and I'm probably going to 2-step it and then use the yellow waffle to finish.
Right. So when we're just compounding, so we want to eliminate a lot of surface scratches very quickly in a big general area, then what we're going to be doing is a little different. First of all, no pressure on the polisher whatsoever. So
and you are putting pressure here. You're putting enough so that the backing plate is still spinning, just to be redundant and help. Yeah. Even if I'm interrupting, I'm sorry. You're putting enough pressure for the 555 that the pad's still spinning, but barely. You're kind of on that fine line.
Exactly. And the reason we're doing that is we want to target that one scratch. If we do it our normal compounding method, which is no pressure and slower speed. So not slower arm speed. Well, yes, arm speed's about the same, but slower machine speed. The whole goal in compounding is to not create any heat. And if we're doing 3 or 4 passes like we normally would over a section, then we might be creating heat if we're, putting that much pressure on it and putting that much speed on the machine. So that's why we'll stay with the 21 millimeter machine. We dial it down to a nice, simple speed 3. Just remember speed 3. That's your general everywhere doing everything speed with a DA, and no pressure, just the weight of the machine. And your polish actually works better that way. But the 555 method, like I said, we're targeting a specific area. We're not trying to do a whole panel, and we're lifting it off before it creates excessive heat. It's creating a bit of heat, yes, but we're not going over that 30-degree threshold. And if you have a scrap panel at home, I encourage you to try this. Take your machine, so you're 21, you're 15, whatever, put the wool pad on it, and just do a section at speed 3 with just the weight of the machine. And then right beside it, do another section pass, same speed, same everything, just turn the speed up to 4. And then check the temperature difference. And then do another one where you keep it at speed 3, but now you put 2 or 3 pounds on the machine. Not an excessive weight. It's more of a common weight that people will put on the machine. And again, read the temperature, and you'll get a temperature spike in that area. And then finally, if you combine the speed and the pressure, you get a really high temperature spike. And what happens when you increase the temperature is you actually reduce the cut and reduce the quality of the finish. So you're going to get more micromarring. Or if you're using a rotary, you're going to get swirls. And with the compound, you're reducing the cut, or the polish in our case. So the gold standard polish is a compound, it's a polish, it does everything you need it to do. But the abrasives in it, think of it this way. The paint or the clear coat that we're working with is a plastic. And when you heat plastic, it gets soft. When it gets soft, your abrasive isn't doing what it's supposed to do. And I've used this example before. We take an ice cube and a marshmallow. If you take sandpaper to an ice cube, it's going to shear off a layer of ice every time. And you're going to wear that ice cube down. If you take that same sandpaper to a marshmallow, you're going to make a gooey mess. And that's what's happening when we're creating heat on the paint. When we're creating heat, instead of the abrasive going across that surface and shearing off a little bit of the clear coat. So think of it as like a razor going across and just lifting off a little piece of that clear coat every time that abrasive is going by. That's what it's doing. If we heat up that paint, now that abrasive, instead of going across and cutting, is grabbing and rolling, grabbing and rolling. Yes, it's going to get a little bit of cut, but then it'll grab and it'll flop and do all sorts of things. And we don't see this. It's not something we can see without a super expensive microscope. But having worked in labs, I can tell you that's exactly what happens. And when it starts rolling or rolling in the clear coat, you're losing cut. So when you're creating heat, you're losing cut. Back in the 70s, we were working on lacquer paints. Lacquer paints needed heat. You could almost take a torch to a lacquer paint and just go over the paint with a torch, and you'd correct some scratches because lacquer reacted to heat well. Clear coats react very badly to heat. But in this industry, we seem to be a little adverse to change sometimes. And, if it's been working since the 60s this way, it should still work today. No, you don't, go out and adjust your carburetor every 2 months or change the points on your ignition every 6 months, because we don't have those anymore. We have fuel injection. We have, modules on top of each spark plug now. So things have evolved. The paint has evolved dramatically on cars, and it keeps evolving. And unfortunately, it keeps getting thinner and thinner and thinner. So the more we polish on it, the more damage we're doing to it. So these methods, where they're very abrupt, they're very quick, but they're also non-invasive, are, what is going to save us as detailers. Because as the industry goes, paint is getting thinner, abrasives are getting better, pads are getting better. So it's sort of a perfect little storm where we have the tools to perfect the paint even more, but now we have less paint to perfect. So that's a quandary that we're in, that we need to look at seriously and go, okay, what does this car really need? As a detailer, our egos tell us it needs to be perfect. I want a piece of glass. I want it so smooth, no damage, no defects whatsoever. And then your customer takes it through the car wash the next day, starting all over again. So there we go.
I think that the fine line between, having fun and then trying to help detailers run profitable businesses, and it's a tough one, because it's like there's a lot of DIYers out there. There's a lot of business owners who now follow us and use our products. And to you non-business owners who are just having fun, just accept that if it's a daily driver, things are going to happen to it. And to you obsessives out there who are trying to make paint perfect, hey, if you're getting paid for it, go for it. But just remember, Ivan's telling you, you're damaging the clear coat if it's OEM paint by wet sanding it and compounding and polishing it. And in a lot of ways, I know we did a recent podcast where we said the 2-bucket method was dead. Paint correction, maybe is paint correction dead? I don't think we should quite say that, but there's a lot of guys who know how to do really high quality work out there, right? It's not saying that you shouldn't. By saying that you shouldn't do it doesn't mean that we can't. We're hacks and that we don't know how, so we'd prefer to just one-step everything. That's not the game that we're playing here. It's just Ivan truly cares about the integrity of your paint. He does. Yeah. He does.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, everyone's paint. But no, the whole idea is, managing expectations. It's something that a lot of detailers think they have to manage their customers' expectations. Completely wrong. You have to manage your own expectations. As detailers, we see things that customers don't see. And if you're a home hobbyist, you're doing this in your driveway. Again, you see things that your neighbor across the street that takes his car through the car wash every week doesn't see and will never see.
Never.
And he looks at his car and goes, my car's as shiny as his. No, yours is glossier. Use DIY detailing products. You're an enthusiast. Trust me, your car looks better. We know it does. But to the average person, maybe not. They may or may not see the difference, or they'll say, his looks a little glossier than mine, but I don't care. So with that, also, there's only so many times you can polish a car.
Yep.
So if you make it perfect once, it's never going to be perfect again because you may have removed way too much stuff. And remember, it got scratched before. Whatever you're doing to your vehicle is causing scratches, whether it's taking it through the car wash, whether it's improper wash technique, whether it's driving on dirt roads and then getting rained on and, or pressure washing a dry vehicle, what have you, you have caused scratches on your vehicle. Now, not saying it's you, could have bought a used vehicle, could have got it from the dealership and they pre-scratched it for you, but, scratches happen. Life happens. Unless your car is in a bubble, it is going to accumulate paint defects over time. And
someone recently told me they've never seen perfect paint before, and they're very experienced in this industry. So just so you know,
exactly.
There's no such thing.
No, you can get really nice paint, but at what cost? And that cost comes in, basically you're taking away clear coat to make it look better. And that taking away the clear coat can be doing a lot of negative things to the vehicle.
Well, Ivan, I think the final thoughts I have are, it's a system.
Yep.
Use what we recommend. Again, 21 millimeter dual action polisher, the specific Yvan LaCroix designed wool pad, a damp pad, which you can accomplish with or without a pad washer, the gold standard polish, 5 pounds of pressure, 5 seconds, speed 5 on the machine. And if you do it that way, you'll get results most of the time. It's safe enough for you to try at home without damaging your vehicle permanently. And that's an important thing to point out.
Exactly. And substitutions in this, don't always work. Microfiber pads, people go, oh, it looks like your microfiber pad. No, your microfiber pad creates heat way, way too quickly.
Super fast.
Yeah, very fast and very aggressive. So microfiber pad isn't the solution. Some other polishes might work with this. That's fine. But again, if you're going to a 8 millimeter stroke or 12 millimeter stroke machine, not very effective. You're just going to create heat. So there's a lot of things in play with this technique that once you get all the components in place and it works, you'll go, aha, now I understand.
Very cool. Well, as always, if you're watching us on YouTube, leave comments. We answer them all. If you're listening to us on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, if there's an ability to leave a 5-star review or a positive review, subscribe to us in that way, that would be greatly beneficial. Buy from us or just continue watching. Keep on rocking in the free world.
Something like that.
Is that keep on rocking in the free world? I feel like
that's
classic rock.
That's a song. Oh,
classic rock.
No, see, to me, classic rock was when 60s and 70s. That's just rock from the 80s. So
keep on rocking in the free.
Yeah, but you weren't.
I was born in 86. It's a free world. Use what you want, don't like, whatever. We appreciate people caring enough about detailing that we get to keep doing this. It's been a fun ride, and it continues to be one. Yeah. Thanks, Yvan. We'll see everybody on the next episode. Oh, and if you want to know more about like this 555 method, we've shown you the short video, but right here,
link down below.
Right here, there's the video where we address the haters on this. We got a little saucy, and we talked about this. So if you're like, I don't have enough 555 in my life, check that one out.
Enjoy.